these days at room 217. There we are. So welcome. It is a great joy to bring somebody new to our community here today. And again, welcome on this Wednesday afternoon on our webinar series. My name is Dawn Ellis-Mobson. I'm the Director of Programs and Community Partnerships with Room 217. And today we have Caroline Blumer here talking about making room for meaningful relationships. And but first, let's just give a couple updates on what's going on in room 217. We do have our Music Care Conference coming to Waterloo in November. So on November 23rd. You've missed the early bird, but you can certainly still join the conference. And so we have, you can go to musiccareconference.com and we will update, or you can register for the conference and get a look at what our schedule is there. And all updates and information about the conference are located at musiccareconference.com. And again, here is a QR code if you like to get more information about our conference. We do have Jackie Richardson will be one of the main performers, Brian Harris speaking to us from Med Rhythms, and Emily Folks coming all the way from the UK. And if you're interested in any of our music care training coming up, we are offering a level 1 training on October the 15th and 16th, level 2 on November 14th and 15th, and level 3 in January. And did you know, for those of you that are here, our webinars, they count for CEU hours, and you can email Tanya or info@room217 if you need that, and you register through Eventbrite, which you know because you're here. Coming up next, we have Rosie Stefanisson, using music as a chronic caregiver in our next series. But a little bit more about our guest, or our featured person today. So Dr. Caroline Blumer holds a PhD in music education from Western University, focused on intersubjectivity related to inclusion, equity, and diversity in musical contexts. She holds a bachelor's degree in popular music and jazz and a master's in music education, both from the State University of Campinas, Brazil. Alongside her work as a jazz singer and musician, she is a researcher and educator interested in popular culture, diversity, improvisation, and critical pedagogy, philosophical, educational, and practical issues involving disability, radical accessibility, and inclusive musical contexts where people with intellectual disabilities experience music making. For 10 years, she has worked with individuals with disabilities and individuals on the autism spectrum within inclusive musical theater programs, elementary and high school in Brazil. In Canada, she is engaged as a volunteer and researcher with 2 inclusive music programs at L'Arche Community and Dreams Come True Music Studio in London, Ontario. Caroline is currently one of Quest coordinators, an adult education program for individuals with developmental disabilities at L'Arche, London. Caroline also runs the program Music Across Culture, which provides participants of the L'Arche London Day program with opportunities to learn songs and engage with the culture of diverse countries. And today, we are, I'll end with this, but this is a series of QR codes too, that you can follow us on. If you're not following us, we invite you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And again, talbis@room217.ca for CEUs. And so we have a small and mighty group here. I'm again, welcome, Caroline. She is going to invite you maybe to participate in a little bit more of an engaging way through chat and through questions. And I welcome that and thank you. Welcome to our community, Caroline.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much. So nice to be here. Can you hear me well? It's so good. I hope so. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Tanya, for the invitation. And I hope, what I'm going to share with you will be helpful for you. So I'm going to type on the chat quickly. I really would love to learn about who is in the room. So if you could tell me about what is your area, if you are a music teacher, or if you are a caregiver, or if you are a music therapist, or just a family member that it's working with a person. So yeah, and what is your area, and what, in your opinion, in your opinion, oops, what makes us feel that we belong? I would love to learn about who is in the room so we can, yeah, talk more specifically about practices and things. That's what I'm going to share today. I'm going to share my screen so you're going to have a visual input. Okay. Oh, sorry.
I'll just jump in, and just if folks want to type in the chat, what is your area? Where do you work? What is your working context? And in that context, what makes us feel that we belong?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so you can see my screen well? Good.
Oh, we're not seeing your screen just yet.
No, just a second then. Can you see now?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. Okay, so as Dawn was saying, I am a music teacher and I'm a jazz musician. And I just would like to bring a little bit of pictures of my work in the past, because so people can have a sense. So during my journey, I started in 2008 to work with people with of all abilities and inclusive environments in artistic contexts, musical contexts, teaching music. And I just would like to bring the motivation. What was the reason that I decided to do some research about relationships in this field? So during my journey in Brazil, I worked in a special school, is a therapeutic school, and we did a lot of work connected with concepts from psychoanalysis and psychomotricity, psychology, and thinking about the constitution of subjectivity and the individuals. And those concepts helped me a lot to engage with my students, to create practices with them. So I decided to pursue this field, this philosophical field in teaching music, and also engage with individuals of all abilities. So that's what I wanted to share with all of you in the beginning. Let me check our chat. Caregiver, music therapists at nursing homes. Okay, work with senior and children care, retirement. Oh, amazing. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. Educational environment, support worker. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, it's so nice to have all of you here. I hope everything that I say makes sense to you. Okay, so introducing a little bit of my research side. So I did doctoral research, and in these two environments in London, Ontario, they are both inclusive environments. Large virtual open mic, which is an open mic where people can come and sing songs. They can, now it's working in person, but at the time that I did my research, we were in pandemic time, so everything was happening on Zoom. So people had the chance to do the solo on the spotlight, the Zoom spotlight, and they could invite other people to sing along with them. So there were 2 hours of performances. And Dreams Come True Music Studio, I don't know if many of you know Dreams Come True, they have been performing a lot in London area. It's a program for all people of all ages and abilities, and they experience musical theater and perform musical theater as well. So my goal today is to shed light to some practices that emerged, that I researched in those programs, that could be helpful for us to think about making room for relationships in musical environments and other contexts as well. So I just would like to bring a little bit, this is just for us to recap the models of disabilities, because I know that many of you are already familiar with this, but people sometimes don't know. And I would like to just bring some lenses that I used in my research to interact with those environments, to engage and to examine, to observe the environments and the practices. So the first model that we have, the medical model, many of you are familiar with this. It's more focused on the disability through the deficit lenses, right? And the focus are more on the individuals and the biomedical needs, what people can do or cannot do, right? The social model brings us, I invite us to think about disability as part of human diversity, and to make a distinction between impairment and disability. So we focus more in this case in removing barriers and giving access to people. When we think about education, we also think about removing barriers and how people can have access to specific contents. And this can be transferred to other areas of work as well. In my study, I decided to use what we are calling interactional models of disabilities, which is a big mix, and it tends to see disability more as a plural thing, a nuanced and in constant transformation, considering people's lived experiences of disability, of impairment and disability. So we're going to consider the medical model, the social model, everything that surrounds that person, their lives, and considering that they change throughout their lives. So we're going to be focusing on ways that people can exist in an environment, can be and become. So these are the lenses that I use from the disability studies to examine my environments that I borrow from them. Also, I would like to also invite you to, while I'm talking, invite you to really think about what is important to making room for meaningful relationships. What do you think this will be important in your field, in your everyday practices? Everything that I say, please think about your everyday practices, okay? So sorry, it's so hard to speak and not see all of you. But I'm bringing now some concepts, some other lenses that I used that I hope you can use, you can borrow to your practices as well, okay? So first of all, I used one concept. I used many concepts from intersubjectivity, but this one is borrowed from relational psychoanalysis and is the concept of mutual recognition. And I think this is very important when we talk about relationships. So mutual recognition is an ongoing process wherein, while being recognized by another person, we become familiar with our own intentions, distinguishing our own part in creating meanings with others. So it means that we become familiar with our own subjectivities, our own participation in things by experiencing ourselves in the presence of others. So when we have the chance to do things in front of others, to experience things the way we are in front of others, then we learn about ourselves. And this is very powerful when we are thinking about engaging students, engaging with somebody with an intellectual disabilities or with any abilities, because we are really engaging with the individuals and who they are and how they exist in the world. So thinking of that, I look at some practices in my study that will provide individuals with the experiences of being seen and known. so they could be seen and known in that environment. So what would be the actions? What are the things that the practices that happen in those programs that provide these opportunities to individuals? And then you can ask this question to yourself in your practices as well. And one of the things that I observed as an outcome, as something that emerged from those practices, it was that allowed individuals to have a better self-understanding, a perception of their selves, and not learn just to do things, how they can do things or could do things, but also who they can be and become in those environments. So this is the point when we think about going beyond access. So it's not just remove the barrier and bring the person to the environment, but also allow them to experience themselves in that environment and experience everything that we are offering in their own way. In this sense, I'm going to invite you, all of you, and put myself in, to think of our role as practitioners working with this population. So in this case, we're going to be the other, or we're going to think about how providing opportunities for people to experience themselves in the presence of another, because we know now that this could help them to learn about themselves, to recognize themselves as individuals in a very profound way. Not just about doing things, but learning about who they can be and imagine possibilities to their lives. Does it make sense? Let me see if I have some. Does it make sense? Okay. Okay, so another thing that I explored in my study, and I invite you to think of, which is in music, is it's not all the time that the practitioners or musicians think of that, but you can also transfer this concept to other areas. So there is a music educator, his name was Christopher Small, and he suggested that we think of music or the act of making music as a verb, as an action, right? And you can think about what you do as an action as well. So he invited us to think about music, and he gave this definition, is to take part in any capacity in a musical performance, whether by performing, by listening, by rehearsing or practicing, by providing material for performance, what is called composition, or by dancing. So in my study, I considered that individuals could participate from many different ways. Every manifestation were considered valid. So I named this as polyphonic subjects, polyphonic individuals, because we use this expression in music, which means that many voices and melodies and rhythms can coexist, happening at the same time and sound good. Or no. But that's not the point. The point for us is to consider that if we consider that what people bring to the scene we can use, it's a contribution that they're doing, then we can expand possibilities to construct multiple narratives, to include people with and without spoken language, to include their stories, their gestures, their movements, their facial expressions, and everything that they bring to the scene. So those were the lenses and the concepts that I used, and I was thinking when I got into the field, when I started to observe those environments, and then I started to identify practices in there. So I started to look at the things that were like very familiar to them, and I called familiar canons, which will be their everyday practices, even though they were learning things because we were doing things on Zoom. Everybody was learning how to do things in the beginning of the pandemic, right? But I was thinking about what were the routines they created for those programs, and how those practices were providing people opportunity to experience themselves. So at the virtual open mic, I just brought here three types of practices. They were very simple, but they made a lot of a difference and a huge impact on the participation of everybody, of all the musicians there. So one of the practices we call Next Up, and it was about the performer that was on the stage were asked to introduce the next up performer, right? So I'm gonna talk more about how these practices were impactful, but people started to prepare themselves to introduce another person and to experience themselves in that position. So other participants that didn't have spoken language or they didn't want to sing, they started to participate by leading dancing parties. So they could invite other people to the spotlight and and dance. And sometimes other people were playing together from their places. So it was also a very powerful tool and powerful practice that could invite and make more people participate meaningfully. And also they used to have a closing song. They still have, because they still have this program on Zoom. And in this moment, they invite everybody to sing a song, and people participate in many different ways. So this is also and those are were and are familiar practices. It means that they happen every day, every time. In Dreams Come True, they had some check-ins and check-outs between throughout the rehearsal. And so Alison, the director, she would have some breaks where the musicians could answer questions or just say what was new for them or just say hi. And that was very powerful during the pandemic because people didn't have many opportunities to do that. So many great things came out from this simple practice, simple activity of checking how are you doing, just asking how are you doing today, just a simple question. So we also had some powerful things happening while people were going through the scripts. So because they could take turns playing roles while reading the lines. And this was also an opportunity for them to experience themselves in different positions. And the showcase concert, because the possibility not it's not offered to everybody, the possibility to be on the stage. So when you can experience yourself, it doesn't matter if you are a musician, if you are a professional musician or a professional dancer or artists, but being on the stage, experience yourselves, it's a very transformative experience. And I'm gonna share a little bit of how this impacted the population of those two programs, the participants. So during my observations, I started to notice some moments, and I think this is going to be very interesting for us to organize our thinking around the relationships, around providing opportunities for people as practitioners. I started to find some moments that those practices generated some moments that I call now moments, or you can think about aha moments, moments that got the attention of people, and they start to they change their position. They start to engage differently in the field and with the activity. And so some of those moments, they evolved into moments and to experiences where people could be seen and on, and I'm going to give examples of that. And some other experiences, they evolved into moments of that I call moments of meetings, where were very profound experiences where people could create something unique with another participant or with the program leader or with whoever were there. So they could create new meanings and bring their subjectivities and who they are to the scenes. So I'm gonna share with you now some of those some stories. I'm gonna just read some vignettes for you that would kind of help you to picture those scenes, okay? Please feel free to ask any questions. If you have any questions, please type on the chat, okay? I'm keeping my eyes open here. Okay, so the first experience that I noticed, the practice, I was thinking about practices that could offer opportunities to people to be seen and known, and I noticed that started to happen in those programs. So I'm going to talk about this next up experience. So in the open mic, the expression next up was explored by Laurel, the leader, to model a simple way to introduce or welcome the next performers into the Zoom spotlight. I noticed that while doing it, some participants began to alter their voice timbre, often to a lower pitch, trying to sound like a TV show presenter. Others literally quoted an expression from an American TV show by repeating a variation of, "Here comes John, come on down to The Price is Right." I think many of you know this show, right? Some just emphatically said something like, "Introducing the one and only Julie," or simply, "Next up, Lucy." As I perceived the participants' changes and engagement with these next up moments throughout the weeks, I began to see different quality of moments arising from those next up practices, affording changes or transitions into new states of being with others. Some of those next up practices produced now moments, aha moments, that turn into moments in which individuals could experience themselves in a different position, in a different subjective position, such as playing an MC role and assuming a leadership position for a short time. Then being recognized as subjects, as individuals for their accomplishments and subjectivities. In this sense, I consider that in those cases, the now moments, they evolved into experiences of being seen and known. So just provide opportunities for people to be seen and known. An example of a now moment that I call a moment of meeting, that I consider a moment of mutual recognition and where people could create very strong and meaningful relationships or strong, meaningful meanings out from that experiences, bringing their subjectivities, was in one of the DCT rehearsals, Dreams Come True rehearsals. So while people were going through the music score and practicing songs, Alan, who is a teenager on the autistic spectrum, typed several times on the chat that he had something to share, to show to the group, actually, to show. And in a proper moment, Alison, the leader, invited him to share his news. And Alan announced, "Here is the mega mix," showing to the group a 3D pentagon shaped twisty puzzle, as you can see on the screen, potentially. So Alison immediately understood that there was a connection between the twisty puzzle and the musical ball song. Balls? I always have difficulty with this word. The ball song, because that song was named Megamix, the High School Musical too. So she got the idea and she engaged in a conversation with Alan, suggesting that he could do a performance solving the puzzle while the group sang the song, and that it was. So it was an exciting moment in which new meanings were created around the Megamix song for Alan and for the group, as well new ways to exist with one another and to engage with the song. So those simple things of giving people opportunities to do things together and to create new meanings can be very powerful in our everyday practices. That's what I want to share with you as well, to shed light. And now I'm going to share something that is very special for me because it comes from my experiences and like studying many concepts from psychoanalysis. And it's a concept that emerged in my study, and but also not that I created that, but I decided to shed light to it. It's when we call symptom as part of the self. So in many situations, there's many actions or behaviors that we experience in our work field that we call symptoms or part of the symptomatology. But when we consider the symptom, that symptom, between quotes, can be also part of the self, part of the how this person is in the world, and we consider those symptoms genuine contributions coming from those individuals, the possibilities to engage with them and to include them meaningfully in any scenario, it's gonna be much larger, is gonna increase. So I'm gonna share with you this story. In my observations, for example, in the open mic, there was a girl, her name is Lucy, and she is a young woman who is visually impaired and also lives with multiple disabilities. Regularly, she requests to sing the song Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. In the beginning, during her performance, Laurel, the leader, was playing guitar and singing along with her. Although Lucy could not visualize herself in the Zoom spotlight or her virtual audience, just like me now, she was able to listen to people's responses after her presentation, cheering her. And she could then perceive a welcoming atmosphere around her presentations. Throughout the weeks, Lucy decided to take some risks and try new things. She kept singing Twinkle Twinkle, but started to do it in different ways. One night, she had a microphone on her hands and informed Laurel that she would sing the song by herself, which something that she never did before. In the subsequent week, Lucy sang by herself again and decided to dedicate her song to Mariana, the support person that was working with her at the time. In the week after that, Lucy had a red flower in her hair and stood up to sing, like if she was in a real stage, and remembering that she was not visualizing any of that, but she was changing her posture. On my last week of observations in the open mic, Lucy was called to the spotlight and said, "I got a song." This is the rhythm she used to say. "I got a different one." That night, she sang "You Are My Sunshine" in the open mic. And now she's also playing the ukulele. So I just would like to highlight this part because in my research, I realized that just as significant as thinking about moments, thinking about practices, it's also important to embrace participants' manifestations and thinking of giving them the opportunities to experience themselves and engage with the environment the way they are. And sometimes we have this repetition, right? Repetitive interest, like a song or something that this person does, or a phrase or a word that this person repeats all the time. And as the others, we have the possibility to engage with that differently and propose different things, and then create different meanings with this person and help this person to perceive themselves differently in those environments. So the psychoanalyst Jessica Benjamin, She highlights that the unconscious is unknown, but it must be viewed as part of the self, bringing the idea of an anotherness in anotherness within. So this idea of considering the symptom as part of the self is because in our in our existence as individuals, we have our conscious part of our minds, but we also have the unconscious part. And all of this is part of our stories, is part of our history, is part of who we are. And it's a non for us practitioners, but we need to assume that it's there. There's something, there's much more behind that manifestation or that song. And when we start to engage in conversations with people, as I did in my research, I'm gonna bring some of those perceptions right now. We can see there's much more behind. So instead of assuming that people can't do or cannot do specific things, or I learned with them and with some concepts from psychoanalysis to assume the opposite, to assume that there's always something more and that can pop up at any time, and we never know. And I invest in this when I am teaching, when I'm thinking about my practices, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes more. So I just brought here, I'm gonna share this slide so you can have those images. And also if you Google my dissertation, you're gonna have this, also this diagram over there. So in here, I did a kind of a summary in the left column, or for, I think it's in the left side, the left column, you're gonna have the practices. So many practices that I observed that provide people with the opportunities to experience themselves differently in that environment. And those practices generated aha moments, moments that where they perceive themselves doing something different, and then they could experience themselves, try new things in front of others. So they were being seen and known in front of, in those contexts. But also some of them could experience themselves in create meanings with others in a unique situation. All of those moments and possibilities generated changes, and then we moved through to the right column. When we think about changes on their body postures, voice tones, perceptions of themselves, I'm gonna bring some of that right now. People recognizing themselves while creating meanings, participating in creating meanings in scenes, in songs, and also people wishing to exist, asking the leaders to participate to participate, to do things differently. Thank you, Dawn. Yeah, thank you for bringing my dissertation. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and that's so. Yeah, people, they started to ask, I want to lead a dance party because I saw somebody doing this, because I did that once, and I could see, I could experience myself in that position. So this make room for people to envision who they can be and become. And in my way to see, this is also a possibility to go beyond the idea of access, that we really need to fight for access. But many people already have access to many contexts, but they don't participate fully, and they don't have the sense that they belong there, and they don't have sometimes opportunities to experience themselves as who they are in those contexts. And that's what I want to talk about. Okay, so I'm gonna bring now just a few quotes that I get from some of the interviews I did for the study. So during the interviews, some participants described situations in which they recognized and experience themselves in different positions, different, we call subjective positions, because it's something that comes from themselves. They have the wish to be there. So it's part of their subjectivities. And in both programs, those kind of this perception happen. And in this sense, they share that they learn something new about themselves. So first, you have JC. Oh, okay. So JC said, she is a dreams come true musician, and she said, I honestly wasn't sure what was going to happen, if I was actually going to sing well, or if I was going to freeze up. But I did it. I got up there and I sang my heart out. Jack from the open mic, he said, I was a singer, I was a DJ, like a host, an MC, this kind of thing. I enjoyed myself. Johnny B from Dreams Come True said, I see myself as a musician, a singer. I can do the choreography. Yeah, I think I've learned a lot of new things about me that I didn't know before. And we also had Brenda saying, I just look forward to expressing me any way I can, whether it's talking or singing, because she used to participate sometimes saying a song, like not singing, but like a poem, reading a song, and it was so beautiful, powerful. Also, lastly, I realized that those programs, they turn into places where those people could exist, because many participants also, they disclose stories, saying that they had the possibility to be included in classes, but they were not, they didn't have the chance to participate. They were not allowed to participate. So Mark said, you know, where they treat someone differently, then I never made it. I auditioned for every single show in high school and never made it. So I did mostly backstage stuff. And Allison, the director of A Dreams Come True, she said, I needed a program, a musical theater program for my son. I wanted an all-inclusive, unified space, not segregated, but where people, regardless of their ability, could gather together. So she created this program so her son could experience musical theater as who they are. So I'm getting to the end, and I'm gonna share in our chat a handout that I created to help you and all of us to think through our practices, so we can ask these questions when we'll be planning something. How can I make room for individuals to experience themselves as who they are, which means being seen and known, including their symptoms, their repetitive interested or echolalia, OCD, repetitive emotions, sounds. How can I make room for meaningful relationships? How can I make room for people to share their stories, doing activities together, going for walks, whatever was meaningful for them? And in this sense, how can I make room for people to exist, to be as who they are, and learn things about themselves in my everyday practices? Okay, so this is the handout. I'm gonna just share the PDF with you in the chat right now. Oops. So you can see that and you can think through that. Think about your practices. What are the things that you do with the person that you are? If you are a music therapist, if you are a caregiver, and it doesn't matter if this person has a disability or not, in what ways you can engage meaningfully, because we have this role of being the other, of sometimes it has to depart we need to take the initiative and assume things, because sometimes we are leading, we are in charge, right? So while you think and think a little bit, and we're gonna have a few a time for questions. I would like to share with you a trailer of that brings together two short documentaries that I made in my research, talking about those two programs, Open Mic and Dreams Come True, bringing some testimonies and some experiences from the participants. Through that QR code, you can have access to the full movies, to more information about this work. Okay. Okay, let's go. Let's watch them.
I found again. Solar power Gabriel. All the guns on my guns and solar power Gabriel. All guns and kiss around. Get to welcome people.
The songs. Sangen Winter and unser Eindruck ist dann ist no geht on the awesome.
Sorry.
I've seen different songs from Magic Pain, Celia, Moonshadow. What songs more want to sing is Lean on Me.
So I did the Gambler again on a Monday morning, open mic, and everybody loved it. I think the reason I really like those two moments is because I don't get that much appreciation. I don't get that thank you or you done a well job or whatever, because I think they think that I already know. And I'd like to hear the words. Thank you. That's wonderful. Love you. It makes me feel real good that I approached something that I've never done before.
As long as the fog that's strong as off, as long as I can rest with the word, as free as the blue, as deep as the word, a quarter as the blue, as big as the snow. Oh, I want to. My experience with open mic is amazing. I love joining open mic. It helps me with a lot of feelings and emotions, and it helps me with connecting with my friends and making new friends.
So just one more thing I want to mention about the culture that was created within the L'Arche London Open Mic, because the uniqueness of this place, I think, allows for all abilities to shine, and perfection is not what is celebrated, but it's the offering.
Dreams Come True Music Studio aspires for everyone of all ages and all abilities to be able to get up each day and sing their song.
Shooting, bad friends, and happy fun.
Making new friends and singing solos and dancing and moving around.
The friendship, the singing, dancing, the parties we have, concerts.
When I saw I feel like I was included with the whole group.
I really like that song, Imagine. It was fun to use my device and my voice to sing with the song. I learned that I could listen to the music, follow along and sing with my voice.
Is let me be the person that I want to be and be my own diva.
Look at this
That's it. Thank you so much. I have lots of sun in my face here. Thank you so much. This is what I thought I wanted to share with all of you. I think we have some time for questions if you want to ask questions, or if you just want to think about, to type on the chat something that you thought about your practice, that those concepts could be helpful for you.
I'll just jump in first of all, and I mean, people jump in, unmute yourself and comment if you like to, but I think the video at the end was really moving, seeing it in place. You know, you walked through your presentation, talking us through the different stages, but seeing it at the end of your presentation was really quite moving. But also, if folks haven't had a chance to download the handout that you provided, the reflection tool, you know, I'm not really sure what you would call it, but the reflection tool on our own practice is really great. And it's Caroline provided it as a PDF in the chat. So I just I have it open on my screen, and it really is quite thought-provoking, you know, like how you're asking you know, us to look at that relationship. So I just wanted to highlight to folks, you know?
A little bit like that, yeah. So
Mhm.
you can think about, you can remind yourself of the concepts on this part here, on the upper part, and then you can think and have there's some room here for you to write down and think what are the practices that I do every day with the people that I work with in my session. If I have, for example, if you're a music therapist, sometimes we have a plan, right? We have how we're going to start, what's going to happen in the middle, what's going to happen in the end. So what are the practices, and because all of this I think independent of the goals that we may have as a teachers, for example, there's so many subjects and contents that we want to teach. But when we have a tool like this, we're going to be including people in a different way, not just because I like to think about, of course, we have the tools provided, for example, for the universal design of learning when we think about accessibility, right? But it's much more thinking about a content and adapting the contents in different ways for people, but not departing from people, from what they need, from how this person usually engages with things that I bring, how this person, for example, manifests themselves when they are going for walks, what they like to do. They are afraid of any kind of things, or they are interested in a specific thing, in a specific color, or sometimes when people are helping people during the shower. I sometimes as an educator, I had the opportunity to also support people in their everyday activities, sometimes in the shower, and it's a moment where we can sing songs, where we can do many other things that will make our relationship at that moment with that person meaningful. And I have a sense that in the disability studies, many of the scholars nowadays, they are thinking a lot beyond the idea of access, because we've been talking about access for a long time in this field, but now the people with disabilities that they write, they advocate for themselves through the disability studies, they are inviting us to think of ways to exist. This is how they exist in the world and how they want to experience the world as well. So if sometimes we're there and we have the power to help them to experience things, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be a way to exist for them and for us as well, to create meaning in our work, in our everyday practices. And for at least in my experience, it's so meaningful, it's so nice to be in an environment when we can have this possibility of create relationships. And of course, we are professionals, we have boundaries, we can place boundaries. Of course, this is part of the job, but it's so different when we have the chance to create meanings with people that we are working with. So yeah,
Especially with
I hope
music.
you,
Yes, especially
especially
with
with music. Yeah.
Yes. Very good. Well, thank you for joining us today. Are there any other questions that we have? And again, I invite you to download the dissertation, which I put in the chat, as well as the handout from Caroline.
Yeah, thank you. I hope this is going to be helpful for all of you.
Right.
I hope this makes sense. I hope this makes sense.
It did. Thank you so much. There's Shelley joining us as well. Thank you, Shelley, for joining us from your car. And again, we will have this downloadable for the website, from our website, obviously, on webinars. And thank you so much for joining us today, everyone.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye now.